Hello and welcome back to Heard and Seen, where today I want to look at exploring some of the hidden albums or forgotten albums of the 1970s. If you look behind me here, you'll see a number of absolute classic albums from the 70s. All of these would be worthy of any collection, and really I'd recommend that most collections would have these in them because they're all fantastic to listen to. But let's face it, they're really not very interesting because everyone has them. There's no surprises. All the material is familiar. It's all brilliant, but it's very familiar. So how do you make your record collection a bit more interesting? If, like me, you've been buying online during all these lockdowns that we've been having, we're probably getting some really nice pressings of some well-known records, which is really, really terrific. But how do you find records by artists you've never heard of or are just not thinking of? It's been really nice since restrictions here in Oz have been easing. We've been able to get out to record stores again, and one of the things that I'm finding is I'm finding records that are exactly that, records I'd never thought of or new artists. And it's been very exciting, and found a couple of new bands or new artists, or should I say old artists that are new to me. So it's a very exciting thing and a great reason to get down to your local record store. If they've just got a new batch that have come in, they've bought off a collector, and you go flick through them and you can go, oh, who's this? I've never heard of this before. Can you put it on? Or you can look it up on All Music or Discogs and see if the words used resonate with you, and then you give it a whirl and just go, wow, this is fantastic, how come I've never heard this before? So it's a wonderfully liberating thing, and it's great to be back out there. So what I thought I'd do is to share one or two with you that I've found recently that I wasn't aware of before. Now I'm going to start with a man who is really, I suppose, famous for his work in the 60s with the Animals and their famous hit House of the Rising Sun. Eric Burdon. Now, my brother-in-law is a big sort of funk and soul sort of lover, and introduced me to this album some time ago, which is War. So this is really interesting. After, I suppose, the 60s, Eric Burdon really diversified, and he teamed up with I suppose a jazz, percussive, bluesy band called War, based out of California, and produced this amazing album which is highly percussive and very inventive and just superb. His bluesy soul voice combined with their skills incredibly well. And if you look at this guys, what an eclectic bunch they are. And it was really a fantastic album, but I've never really explored Eric Burdon outside of this, and despite having worked for the man who discovered the Animals for a couple of years back in the 80s when I was very young, I'd never really taken much of an interest. But then in October I just came across this one in one of the record stores here in Melbourne, it's called The Original Animals, and it just looked in good nick, and it wasn't very much money. And this is actually a reunion album from the late 70s when they got back together, and I'd never heard of it, and I thought, oh, it's not much, I'll take a punt. So I bought this, and it is absolutely sensational. This is really fantastic blues rock, a lot of fun, there's humour in it, it's beautifully produced, sounds magnificent on your turntable. So I bought that, and I thought I really enjoyed that. I wonder what else he's done. So through Instagram, actually, I was chatting to someone, and they mentioned there's a number of other great albums. But after that conversation, I happened to go into a record store in the city here in Melbourne, and I came across this one here, which had Eric Burdon's name on it. Again, it wasn't on my radar. But this is a collaboration he did just after finishing with War. And it's Eric Burdon with the great blues singer Jimmy Witherspoon. And it is just a sensational blues record. It is really loose, but loose, energetic, and mesmerizing is probably how I describe it. I read some reviews online and actually got slated by the critics but it is a fantastic record that is beautifully recorded, and highly energized blues, really, really good. So I bought that one. This is a Japanese pressing of that, which isn't actually even on Discogs, funnily enough. And then I thought, well, I'll have some more of that, please. So next time I went in, I sort of looked in a different record shop, and just for Eric Burdon, and they happened to have this one, which is called Sun Secrets. Now this one is also, it's bluesy, but it's almost psych rock, glam rock, and it's got some fantastic reworkings of Animal songs on it. And I did read that he didn't even want this one released because it was recorded, but it was meant to be rehearsals, but I'm not sure if that's true or not. But it is a fantastic album. Again, it's beautifully recorded. The sound on here is magnificent. And some of the reworkings of the Animal songs just go into the stratosphere. They are fantastic. And these are all albums that I would not have discovered or even gotten to if I hadn't just picked up that reunion album of the Animals from the late 70s. So yeah, some fantastic stuff to explore there. His voice is just iconic. He must have had one of the best voices in rock ever, and the diversity of his albums is amazing. Some of them you'll love and some of them you won't, and probably no two people will like the same albums because they are very, very diverse. But yeah, Eric Burdon is an absolute treasure trove of 70s albums that really people have forgotten about. Fairly recently I went into a record store quite close to where I live here in Melbourne, and I was just browsing, not really intending to buy anything, not looking for anything particular, but in their just in section they had a copy of Mott by Motherhoop. So not really an album I was familiar with or really aware of. Motherhoop I heard of through All the Young Dudes, which is a very famous song which most people have heard of. But I just saw this and it was in great condition, and it's got this, you know, very striking sleeve, and has this sort of laminated in a bit that most of them don't have anymore because they've fallen off. But yeah, just it was in great nick, and it was very striking, reasonably priced, I suppose. So I thought, oh, I'll give that one a go. And this is an absolute gem. It is a fantastic concept album about a rock star that's never quite made it. Probably quite autobiographical, I suppose, in a lot in parts. But a really fantastic album and a real end-to-end listen, and I really enjoyed it. And there's a couple of hits that they had from this album, I think, all the way from Memphis probably being the biggest. But again, this one, Motherhoop's not a high-profile band these days, and they don't get the attention they probably deserve. So I thought, well, you know, I enjoyed that one. That's fantastic. What else have Motherhoop done? Because I've successfully ignored them for so long. And of course, the natural step is to get their best-known album, which is All the Young Dudes. And this is a 200-gram reissue of it. It's, you know, beautifully pressed, quality pressing version. You know, that's where online comes in, I suppose. But yeah, fantastic album produced by David Bowie. I think they were about to break up when this was produced, and this I suppose really made them break through in America and do very, very well. But again, not necessarily a well appreciated album these days, and underrated. And the main driving force here was Ian Hunter and also Mick Rouse, who went on to form Bad Company. But it got me thinking more about Ian Hunter and what else has Ian Hunter done, because I'm very familiar with Bad Company's work. And I found this album very locally, and this is I think 1979, so it just sneaks into the 70s. So this one is the brilliantly titled You're Never Alone with a Schizophrenic, and it is just one of the best albums in my collection. It is absolutely fantastic. The songwriting on here is amazing. The production is top notch, really, really great sounding record. Some very emotive songs, some really hard hitting songs as well. And again, these are albums I would never have heard if I hadn't been passing through or flicking through the just in bin in a local record shop. And I suppose those are gatekeeper albums, aren't they? The ones that you find and they just open a gate, and then in behind that gate there's a whole series of other albums that you've never heard of, and suddenly you go, well, why haven't I heard this before? It's so good. So it's really some really, really rich pickings to find out there. Another record that got put under my nose when I went into one of my regular haunts was this one, Latimore, Dig a Little Deeper. So this one had just come in, and a bunch that hadn't even been priced up or sorted yet. And they've just put on the desk in front of me and said, oh, yeah, have a look, see if there's anything there that takes your fancy. So I had a flick through, came across this, and I'm partial to a bit of funk, soul, blues, and looked at this cover and I thought, I need to know more about this one. Just really, really funky looking dude on the front. So read a little bit about him, and this guy Latimore is in the Blues Hall of Fame. Was inducted in 2017, but really most of the time has been a session musician. I think he was on Josh Stone's first albums, but when you look at this and you go, well, it's got the Muscle Shoals crew who've done the basic tracks, and there's going to be a great groove on this. So I asked the owner of the record shop to put this on for me, and he put it on. It's like 10 seconds in, it's like, yeah, this is worth a punt. It wasn't much money, but absolutely love this album. And fascinating story. You know, these sorts of musicians that never really break through, they're the really interesting ones. So they have more tales to tell than the ultra successful ones. And I find this is what makes record collecting very, very interesting. So this is another album I would never have found looking online. It just wouldn't have been on the radar. Before I'm too dismissive of these amazing bands behind me, there are some fantastic records from their back catalogues that are well worth exploring. In particular, I would say Fleetwood Mac. So many people don't realise that Fleetwood Mac had quite a history before Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks even joined them. They were one of the great blues revival bands coming out of the late 60s in London. And Peter Green, their guitarist, was one of the foremost of those blues guitar players. Just had a really beautiful, beautiful touch. And you may be familiar with the song Albatross, which was a big hit for them at the time. So I've actually only just really started exploring their early stuff myself. And one of those that I found, which I really, really love, is Then Play On, which is a superb album. Features their song Oh Well, which I think has been covered by a number of people as well. Coming Your Way. It's a really, really mesmerising album. It's beautiful, beautiful guitar playing, rich production. This is a Japanese pressing that sounds fantastic. So that one is worth seeking out, but as I say, I think they've got a few style changes between the early 60s and between before Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks joining. So that should be an interesting journey of exploration. But in that I also found this album by Otis Spann. Now Otis Spann, I think my brother-in-law again played me an album by him. Now he is a quite superb blues piano player, and he backed, I think, people like Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf in the 60s, as part of that Chicago scene. And there was a big jam session that was recorded. I think it's available on an album with all of those greats on, including Fleetwood Mac. And this was recorded directly after. They obviously got on really well. And this is just a beautiful combination of his piano playing with Peter Green's guitar, and it meshes really, really beautifully. So this is another album. It's been reissued, I think, as well. So this is a reissue. So again, there's some fantastic albums that you can uncover once you go into the back catalogues. Deep Purple, you can explore, say, Glenn Hughes's back catalogue with Trapeze before he joined, or some of their late 60s stuff, which was much more prog rocky. So there's a whole rich tapestry out there that you can tap into. So those are a few albums I've enjoyed discovering, and they're certainly adding a greater depth to my record collection. There's a few others as well. The Pretty Things Parachute from the early 70s, that's a fantastic album. There's all sorts of Joe Cocker albums which I'm starting to accumulate, which you can often find in the bargain bins, which is an added bonus. And a band called Captain Beyond that I've just been exploring as well, so psych rock, and I need to know a little bit more about them. But I'd love to hear some of the music perhaps that you have found while you're collecting as well. And so if you want to email me at heardandseenmusic@gmail.com or leave comments below, I'm going to start putting together a bit of a playlist for Forgotten 70s. And yeah, I'd be really interested to see what you've come up with, whatever genre, and it'll start to make a bit of an interesting playlist. So if you like what I'm doing, please hit subscribe below. And in the meantime, enjoy your record collecting, and hope you're able to get out to some record stores as well. And thanks for watching, and I look forward to hearing from you.